We have quorum, so you can begin.
All right, let's call the RPC meeting to order, and we'll start with roll call.
Mayor Finan, Patrick Brown,
Yes, here.
Mayor Frühling-Voges, Darlene Kleppel,
Here.
Mayor Smith, Christopher Walton,
Here.
Mayor Marlin,
Here.
Mary Alice Wu,
Here.
Kyle Patterson, Jim Goss,
Here.
Tom Bruno, Katina Wilcher, and Kelly Blandon. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Smith's on from Rantoul.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Walton.
Do we have a
Second, Kleppel.
Do a roll
And the
call?
roll call is Mayor Finan, Patrick Brown. Yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Frühling-Voges,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
Yes,
Katina Wilcher, and Kelly Blandon. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Do we have any audience participation? Okay, hearing none, let's go on and move on to consolidated financial reports.
We need the minutes approved first.
Oh, sorry. Missed that one. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second. Kleppel.
Okay,
Roll
let's do
call is
roll call.
Patrick Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Frühling-Voges,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
yes,
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
yes,
Katina Wilcher,
Yes.
and Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Mr. Brown, for today, Chris Ward will be speaking on behalf of anything that Ms. Murphy usually reports.
Okay, well, let's move on then to consolidated financial reports.
Good morning. In your packets, you have two consolidated financial reports for the months of August and September. And there's nothing unusual to report there. We continue to maintain a healthy cash flow and fund balance for an agency of our size. We do have expenditures exceeding revenue, but that's typical because we are working through rental assistance funding that we received earlier in the prior fiscal year. So.
Okay, any questions from any commissioners?
Move we accept and place on file these reports.
Do we have a second?
Second, Walton.
And
Do a
roll
roll-
call is Mayor Finan, Patrick Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Frühling-Voges,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
yes,
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
yes,
Katina Wilcher, and Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, now we'll move on to the list of bills. Chris Ward.
Yes. List of bills are provided in your packets, and the only comment I would make about those, they are typical for this time of year. We process lots of rental assistance, LIHEAP, client benefits. Those kinds of items remained high in volume. And, our Head Start and workforce development expenditures are pretty constant. Nothing unusual to point out there. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to accept and place the list of bills for August and September on file?
So moved, Goss.
Second,
Second.
Woo.
All right, any discussion or any questions? Let's have a roll call.
Mayor Finan, Patrick Brown.
I'm a yes. I couldn't get my
That's okay.
camera and my mute
I
to
knew you
stop.
were there. Mayor Frühling-Bogus,
Yes.
Darlene Feppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
Yes.
Katina Wilcher,
Yes.
and Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think next on the agenda is the strategic plan. Who wants to get us started on that?
Mr. Chairman, I will go ahead and introduce again our consultants, Jeff Schilling and Kate White. As you know, we have been going through this process. I believe at the beginning of summer, the consultants did engage the commissioners. There was even a focus group to work on the mission statement of the organization. Since then, they worked with primarily the senior management team. But as I've indicated previously, and as you will see as they present this to you, we did try to engage the primary stakeholders of the Regional Planning Commission, including staff. With that said, I will go ahead and introduce our two consultants to present this draft plan to you for your consideration. Jeff?
Thanks, Philitzo. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Well, if you're used to an occasional sports broadcast on TV or radio, I'll be your play-by-play, and Kate will be your color commentator. And I'm going to move kind of quickly through the material, leave plenty of time at the end for questions. You have a draft that was advanced to you of the narrative part of the strategic plan. You should know that along with that narrative, there's a very large PowerPoint, over 100 slides of data and tables and key tools that we use along the way in the process. So think of that as a giant appendix that goes along with that narrative, that draft narrative that you saw. Next slide. The way I would like to propose maybe the next 20 minutes or so is I'm going to give you a very brief refresher on the process that we used, and then go right into the key elements of the plan, the mission statement, the vision and goals, and how did we come up with the tactics using a gap analysis approach. I also want to talk a little bit about an exercise that we did to anticipate some possible scenarios that may unfold over the next couple of years. Scenario planning's become more popular recently due to COVID. I think it reminded everybody that sometimes when unanticipated events come up, you have to really reassess what's in your plan. And we'll show you a brief exercise that we did to do just that. The other thing that you need to know is the process was conducted in a way that complies with CSBG standards for strategic planning. And I'll show you a quick summary of that. Should have plenty of time left at the end for questions. Next slide, please. So I'll start with the overview. Next slide. You might remember this diagram, maybe from way back in the summer. I think it's one that we showed the commission when we had that introductory meeting with them. But nonetheless, this is a sort of a framework, a mental framework for the approach that we use. And I like to refer to it as a vision-centered approach. Right in the middle of the page, you see that red block. That's the desired future state of the organization, usually expressed either in a vision statement or goals, or often both, as is the case for you all. You have both a new vision statement and some goals. And there's information that feeds that thinking about where do you want to be 3 years from now. The mission is part of it. We'll talk briefly about that, but also assessments of what's going on in the industry that you work, and then also what's happening in your marketplace. Once the vision has been crystallized, Then it's time to step back and look at where the organization is today. We do that with an organization assessment using a tool that a lot of you are probably familiar with, a SWOT analysis, fed by also a lot of data. And that sets up that gap analysis, contrasting where you want to go to where you are now. It's usually pretty easy to develop some strategies and tactics, and that leads to the rest of the plan, the written plan, the measures. And there you even see a summary down below there of the contents of your written draft that you already have. Next slide, please. Now, none of this would have been possible without the participation of a strategic planning team. And these individuals gave a lot of their time over a series of quite a few meetings, 2 of which were all-day meetings back in July, to review a lot of data and engage in some great dialogue about both where the organization needs to head and where it is now. So just again, Kate and I want to thank these team members. They really did a lot of work over the course of the last 5-6 months. Next slide. This is the process that we use in a diagram form. And we started way back in April, beginning to collect data for that industry and market assessment and also for the organization assessment. We had the commission meeting board kickoff where we talked about the mission statement a little bit way back in May. And that triggered then a lot of continued work on data, meetings with the strategic planning work group, and leading all the way up to presentation of this draft plan 2 days ago to the Community Action Advisory Board and now to you. So we're way at the end of the process after a pretty long endeavor. And you can see those 2 day-long meetings in July that those were heavy lists, but we got a lot done. Next slide, please. So let me talk just briefly about the key elements. And this is all written up in the draft. So if you've had a chance to look at the draft, I don't want to go over a lot of material that's in the draft, but just hit a few highlights. Next slide. I mentioned a lot of data, and we really did look at quite a bit of information, including information that you already have. You already do surveys of some of your key constituents. And so we looked at current survey data, analyzed that. You also recently did a very thorough community needs assessment. We highlighted information from that, but we added to that interviews with industry leaders, some key informants, a lot of secondary research, pulling in fresh data about what's going on in the market and in the industry. We had a new community services early ed survey, a police training survey. We did a focus group with the planning community development group, and then workforce development had just completed a sort of a mini strategic planning, and they did a SOAR analysis. We incorporated that, plus a very extensive new employee survey in which we repeated a lot of questions from prior surveys, but added quite a few. All of that information fed different parts of the plan. Some of it was really helpful to us as we considered if we should change the mission statement at all. Much of it flowed into the industry and market assessments, but also the organization assessment. Next slide.
And Jeff,
Yes, go
before
ahead.
we leave this topic, I want to thank all of you who were so very generous with your time and participating in the key informant interviews, as well as on the different work groups that we had throughout the process. Your input was really critical, and we really appreciate the time you gave to the process.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I know some of the members here on the commission were participants in those interviews, and a few of you, I think, even helped with the mission statement. You'll see the names of the people on the right-hand side of this page. We pulled together this small mission work group, and you might remember from going way back to the CCRPC kickoff meeting, everyone kind of felt pretty comfortable with the current wording of the mission statement, but everyone also kind of agreed it was time to maybe reframe it and rephrase it in a way that's a little bit more consistent with newer approaches to mission statements. Newer mission statements tend to be shorter. And I think one of the reasons for that is the mission statement is the thing that a lot of employees fall back on when they encounter a situation for which there's no procedure or no policy. The thing that sort of guides their actions at that point is usually the mission statement and the values. So it's a very important part of the organization culture, and it helps affirm the direction of the organization. And you can see the end result of the work here. That group had a lot of good comments, and we took that information, kept refining it, and ended up with the new wording that you see, which is shorter, a little bit less emphasis on the how, but a very clear description of the purpose of the organization. Next slide. With the mission statement reframed, we moved on then to the industry assessment. What's going on in the world of human services, commissions like CCRPC, community action agencies. What can we learn from what's happening in those industries, the issues, the trends, and the emerging best practices? And you'll see a list on the left there of some of the most important issues that we really felt needed to be considered in thinking about where CCRPC was headed. The whole concept of whole family bundled services, or addressing racial equity. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention COVID and its impact on need, but also workforce turnover. We're in an unprecedented time in terms of workforce shortages affecting virtually every industry. There's also a growing realization about the importance of social determinants of poverty and the overlap with social determinants of health and the need for care and case management of your clients. And then finally, leveraging technology for efficiency and customer. Those were the really key ones that just sort of resonated. And some of those, I think, might sound familiar to you when you think back to your community needs assessment. Some of those issues were emerging at that time as well. Next slide, please. Then we moved to the market assessment. From all that data, what could we tell about Champaign County and the surrounding geography? What were the needs and the issues and the emerging trends in that geography? Some of these definitely were just affirmations of what you found from your own community needs assessment. Transportation challenges is just beginning to emerge over and over again as we do strategic plans in human services, the criticality of having transportation. But you can see some other issues there too that are very familiar, as well as the emergence of mental health concerns. You can go to the next slide. Those items, the mission, industry assessment, and the market assessment, set the stage for some thinking about the desired future state. That was the first of the two day-long meetings back in July, where the group really took in all that information and started to think about, well, what should be our goals over the next 3 years and how do they compare to our prior goals? And also what emerged is a new vision statement. And both of these, I think, do an excellent job of capturing where the organization needs to head in the next 3 years. Well, with the desired future state set, now it was time to turn our attention to what's the current state of the organization. Next slide. And a couple of things helped there. Just before we started talking about that, we did one more thing to make the future state a little bit more concrete, and that was to think through measures. Now, this is a really important part of the planning process, not only for having accountability to whether or not we achieve the desired future state, but it also makes the future state a little clearer, and it makes this gap analysis phase a little bit easier. We actually brainstormed and thought about more measures than you see on this page, and then came back and cut the list down a little bit more. So you see that for every goal, there's at least 2 measures, 2 ways to assess whether you're making progress on the plan. And that's very important. That's the accountability piece. We don't want to be in a situation 3 years from now where it's a debate about whether we've achieved our goals or not. We want to be able to look at metrics and be able to see that the progress has been made. The other thing that we did here is we made sure that the measures were applicable to standard 6.3. And that has to do with The goals of the organization have to be consistent with Roma standards and the focus on both family, agency, and community. And by looking at the goals and the measures, we were able to sort of track how well we were in compliance with that standard. And you see that noted in the column on the far right.
And as you recall, this is primarily for the community action portion of the work of RPC, but it does help the commission also see that, you know, we're doing things in a broad context that serves the community.
Next slide. Well, now it was pretty easy to just think about the current state of the organization. Remember, a lot of the data was informing that as well. And we used a tool that, again, a lot of you are familiar with, called a SWOT analysis, where we had a chance to talk about, well, what are the strengths of CCRPC today? What are the weaknesses, things that we could be doing better? What are the opportunities that are out there and the threats that we might see coming? And you see some of those listed there, the key ones. With having a future state defined, even to the point of how we're going to measure it, and now this organizational assessment describing the current state, that's when we led into thinking about strategies and tactics. And the group that participated in that second day-long meeting in July might remember a lot of work with yellow stickies and putting them all over a big whiteboard and sorting them out into themes. And that just works really well as a quick way to get started on strategies and tactics. A lot of credit goes to the work group because after that meeting, they continued to work with the list of strategies and tactics. And there's about 40 tactics that go with this strategic plan, and they fit under a handful of themes. Next slide. You can see the themes that all those tactics group under on the bottom right there. There's 6 groupings. Some of it has to do with recruitment, retention, and development. That's no surprise. Data and technology, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the integration of services. Remember how that theme was emerging from some of the early data. Communication and engagement. How can we build on and improve how we communicate to the broader community and our constituents? And then funding. Now, the other part of how we're going to get there, I mean, you think about strategies and tactics as the way we're going to achieve those goals. There's another important piece, and that's the culture of the organization. How do we create a culture that's conducive to those strategies and tactics and achievement of those goals? And one of the most important aspects of any culture are the values that are upheld by the organization. So the group also took a look at current values of CCRPC, and you might remember these 6 values, and they affirmed that all those still seemed highly relevant to achieving these goals, but they added another one, and you see it listed there, data-driven and regionally focused. They felt like with the addition of that 7th value, then we really would be building a culture that helps us achieve the vision and the goals. Next slide. When all the pieces are put together on one page, it looks like this. And some of our clients take this and actually have it present as a printout at every meeting. It's just a way to reinforce the direction of the organization and use it as a lens through which they can think about all of the work they're doing on an ongoing basis. That's where planning moves from just doing a document once every 3 years to becoming an organization that's always planning. It becomes a more active state. And I think that's really what starts to separate best practice and strategic planning. Next slide. Well, the last thing I wanted to mention to you in terms of content of the plan is scenario implications. Next slide. And we use this tool to begin to think about 4 scenarios that we believe might unfold or might not over the next couple of years. And one of the things that we've learned about how organizations respond to scenarios is it usually creates an opportunity to go back to their plan and reassess their goals. Which of them are are even more important than they were before the scenario unfolded, and which of them had to be postponed, delayed, or just de-emphasized for a while. With that kind of thinking, then, what the group did is revisited each of the 5 new goals within the context of each of these 4 scenarios. And we've already highlighted which goals we think might have heightened priority as that scenario unfolds, and which at the opposite end of the spectrum might have a lower priority. So this, you can consider this as like the first tool for thinking about how to scenario proof your strategic plan. The next step might be to set up some opportunities to use early indicators to get a sense of whether any of these scenarios are beginning to unfold, and then go into more detail, probably to revisit the tactics associated with the plan and make sure we understand what we need to do differently, which would be more important, which would be less important, maybe some new ones. Next step. The last piece here is just to do a quick review of the community services block group standards that relate to strategic planning. And the next slide starts to show you the whole category of strategic planning, where in the far right column where you see those checked boxes, that's where Kate and I believe that your process has complied with the standard. You'll see a few of them that are unchecked, but those are just meetings that haven't taken place yet or are taking place right now. So as a result of those meetings, those boxes will be checked as well. You can go to the next slide. In the standards, there's a few that fall outside of that category, and other categories like consumer input, community engagement, and organizational leadership. And some of those standards are pertinent to the process that we ran as well. So you can see how some of those have been tracked for you. Next slide. The last thing I want to mention is, with all that content, how are we going to review this plan? I alluded to earlier that what differentiates best practice in strategic planning is when you move beyond creating a document to where you're thinking about the plan all the time. It becomes as much a part of your work as any other function, finance, HR. And it's important to not only use that one-page reference, but to begin to think about, are we achieving those tactics? They have been deployed over the 3-year period. So as you move through the next 3 years, there are certain tactics that should be being worked on. That's an important check, but then also the metrics. Remember, there's measures for each of the goals. You can display them in a variety of ways. The way it shows on this page is with using what's called a spider graph, but there's other more traditional ways to display your goal measures. But the other important piece of this is how often is it getting reviewed? And in discussion, what the leader group felt might be a really good approach, building off of what you've done in the past, but maybe taking it to the next level, is begin to reference this plan in routine meetings with managers. So when they meet with their direct reports or with their directors, then they would actually take a moment to talk about, is there anything that you should be doing that's related to the strategic plan? Are there any tactics that you're responsible for, or that you're part of a team? That would then, information that ensures that there's work going on, and that next step level up is leadership. And every 6 months, the leadership team should be taking a look at the strategic plan and the measures and the tactics. And then that would move up to boards, both the Community Action Advisory Board and this commission, in terms of annual updates. That flow of information sets up a very consistent review of the plan process. Next page. And I think that leaves us time for questions, comments, needed changes. Maybe before we start that, Kate, anything that I left out, anything that you want to mention? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, my computer was a little sticky this morning. It has been a pleasure to work with you all as well as the staff of CCRP And we're ready to take any questions that you might have on the presentation or on the draft plan.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank RPC staff for all their hard work in putting this together and working with the consultants and being a part of these teams. I had the privilege of helping out and offering some feedback with the mission and vision and principles, and the insight that staff gave was very, very helpful. And you can tell how passionately they care about their work and how determined they are to find new and better ways to make RPC work more functionally and more strategically. So I just want to shout out to staff and thank the LITSO and his team for their leadership on this.
I would like to say, I just realized how difficult it is to get groups of people to agree on some of these things and to get all the pieces checked off on your boxes with all the different stakeholders that you have. I think you've come up with a good plan. I like that you've consolidated it down into one page because I think that's the part that'll get used a lot. And I hope that the commission does incorporate a review of this plan on an annual basis so that they can move forward with an action plan. You're right. A lot of plans are just formed and then sit on a shelf. And in order for it to be effective, you have to be able to use it and match your activities to the plan. So thank you.
Okay, if there's no one else, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2023 to 2025 strategic plan as presented.
So moved, Walton.
Second, Marlin.
All right, any further discussion? Go ahead and do a roll call.
Mayor Finan, Patrick Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Frühling Vogus,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
Yes.
Katina Wilcher,
Yes.
Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of a one-time disability waiver. Brandy, is she with us? Brandy?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am requesting your support and approval to submit a one-time disability waiver for the September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022 school year. As of August 31st, 2022, the total percentage of children with a diagnosed disability in our program was 8.3%, which did not meet the 10% enrollment requirement for children with a disability. There were several factors that contributed to the low numbers, such as low enrollment, due to the staffing vacancies that we have, ineligibility for support services, and incomplete evaluations from the school districts and/or early intervention due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In your packet, I provided the full letter that contains the required data for the waiver request. This past Monday, I received approval from the Policy Council. I'm open to any questions you might have.
Yeah, this is Patrick. Have we had to request waivers in the past? Is this frequent?
No, this is not frequent. I think the COVID pandemic really caused a really major shift. This is not normal for us. We've had to request 3 waivers. You know, this will be the 3rd waiver that we've requested since the pandemic occurred.
All right, any other questions?
Traditionally, what's the percentage of children with disabilities?
We usually have at least 10%, and usually more. But we're not able to, and I think, you know, I think it's important for you to understand that due to the vacancies, we haven't been able to open all of the classrooms. Therefore, we have not been able to, see the children, enroll children. So that's made a huge impact on our ability to serve more children with disabilities.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve the one-time disability waiver as presented?
So moved, Wiltshire.
Second?
Second, Marlin.
All right, do we have any other discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Okay, Mayor Fine has stepped away. Patrick Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Frühling-Vogus,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Christopher Walton,
Abstain.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
Yes.
Katina Wilcher,
Yes.
and Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next is approval of the fiscal year 23 health insurance plan, and Chris will take that as well.
Yes, you have before you a memo and the details of the proposed fiscal year 23 health insurance plan. It includes approximately a 6% increase in premium. And I would ask for your approval of this plan for next year.
So move, Kleppel.
For a second.
Second, Walton.
All right, second. Any discussion? I'll just say, the Village of Mohammed saw, we don't have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but it was a 5% increase, and we were shocked. We expected quite a bit more, actually. So I think 6%, I don't know what other people see in their communities, but 6%, when I read that today or this morning, I thought, wow, that's pretty good.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion? And I'll entertain a oh wait, now we'll do a roll call, sorry.
Yes, Patrick Brown,
Yes.
Mary Frühling-Vogus,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Tom Bruno,
Yes.
Katina Wilcher,
Yeah.
and Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Brandy will present the early Head Start report.
Great, good morning again. The management team has been working on several reports, such as the self-assessment, community assessment, and the continuous quality improvement plan. We have been gathering input from the community partners, staff, and families as we review the 2021-2022 program year and begin preparing for the 2023-24 school year. All of these reports will become documentation in the continuation grant applications for Head Start, Early Head Start, and Early Head Start expansion. At this time, I mentioned earlier that we still have staffing vacancies. Our program has 39 vacancies with 12 classrooms closed. The management team continues to work closely with the HR team as well as pursuing suggestions and additional support from the staff, from the Office of Head Start, National Head Start Association, Illinois Head Start Association, and other Head Start directors across the state, as well as the Policy Council. I do have good news to share that I was selected to be a member of the Birth to 5 Illinois Action Council. The mission of the Birth to 5 Illinois is to create a statewide regional infrastructure that will amplify input from communities in the development of policies and funding priorities. They support the mobilization of communities to build and sustain equitable access to inclusive, high-quality early childhood services for all children and families in the state of Illinois. I'm very hopeful about this council and being able to provide input from an early childhood Head Start perspective And I'm hoping to see some major change across the state of Illinois regarding funding. At this time, that concludes my report for July and August. I'm open for any questions that you might have.
All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the Head Start management reports.
I'll make that motion, Wiltshire.
We have a second? I'm sorry, who was that?
Mayor Smith, second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Patrick Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Fruleng-Vogus,
Yes.
Darlene Kleppel,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Christopher Walton,
Yes.
Mayor Marlin,
Yes.
Mary Alice Wu,
Yes.
Kyle Patterson,
Yes.
Jim Goss,
Yes.
Katina Wiltshire,
Yes.
and Kelly Blandon.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to program division updates. We'll begin with finance. Chris?
Yes. I do want to share or reiterate that I know many of you know, all of you know, the 2021 Champaign County audit was completed and filed with all the federal and state recipients as required. There were no findings applicable to the programs that the RPC administers. And I want to publicly thank the fiscal team for their very diligent and accurate work throughout the year, and then specifically the work required in conjunction with this audit, because they are instrumental in delivering these outstanding results, I will say. The audit was submitted within days of the September 30th deadline, so much better than in previous years.
Okay, let's move on to human resources. Becky? Maybe Becky's not with us. Lisa for community services.
Oh, hello. Good morning, everyone. The Human Resources Report included in your packet today represents personnel transactions from August 14th through October 27th, 2022. RPC currently has 332 active employees, which includes 79 work experience participants. Our current employee count does not include the Youth Employment Services employees, as the program concluded in late August with 84 students participating in this year's program hosted by the Champaign Unit 4 School District. The Human Resources Department has been focused on several staffing strategies to attract, motivate, and retain qualified staff. The management team is working strategically to fill 47 open positions as soon as possible. Our vacancies include job opportunities with our Community Services Division that are focused on securing housing, supporting community members with disabilities, and energy efficiency. Our Head Start program is currently seeking to hire employees to lead our early childhood classrooms and provide support with the dietary needs and bus transportation services for our students. Our Workforce Development Services Division is seeking case management and program support talent. And finally, the Data and Technology Division is recruiting for a data and technology manager and software developers. Our HR team, along with our division management teams, are reviewing our hiring practices, selection processes, and new hire and exit data to reduce vacancies as soon as possible. Our team has set a goal to reduce our vacancies by 50% over the next 60 days. RPC is constantly developing and adjusting our recruitment and retention strategies. Our team has been busy conducting job analyses, revising job descriptions, analyzing our compensation structure and current market data. In efforts to support our retention goals, RPC has issued retention awards and one-time merits. Various divisions have administered stay surveys to identify why employees enjoy their job at RPC and determine viable strategies for retaining our talent. I'll be happy to address any questions.
Okay, thank you. Lisa Benson?
Good morning. I wanted to highlight in the strategic plan, there was references to the CSBG organizational standards. RPC as a community action agency for Champaign County, each year we receive a monitoring specific to CSBG federal organizational standards. And this past year, we have received our monitoring results. There were 50 standards reviewed, and we indeed had no findings. Of those 50 standards, 35, we've met the standard, and then 30% or 15 of those standards, we actually were going beyond and exceeding those measures. We do strive to have positive results on our organizational standards, and in the upcoming year, we'll create strategies to hopefully even increase the number of standards that we're exceeding in organizational standards. Jeff had also noted in the strategic plan that transportation was a challenge. In the Community Services Division, to always address that, we provide community-based services. That means we go out into the community and meet people where they are. That can be in homes and, just generally anywhere in the community. We've expanded our services with the addition of the LIHEAP office in Rantoul. And then we anticipate in hopefully next week, but definitely in the next couple of weeks, receiving our mobile unit for the LIHEAP team, where again, we can be community-based and providing services in the community. We also have started the Barriers to Employment Reduction Program. It is specific to transportation assistance. We're providing transportation assistance to those that need a bus pass, a bicycle, or auto repair to maintain employment or to seek employment. Also referenced has been the staff vacancies. Community Services has also been experiencing some difficulties with staff vacancy, particularly in our case management work. Because of staff vacancies and limited applicants that meet qualifications, our staff are having increased caseloads and workloads covering for where those vacancies are. So rather than reduce services, we're kind of overworking a little bit. And then we also do have some referral programs that are on hold because of staff vacancies. As Becky highlighted, we're doing as much as we can to try to recruit and get folks into those vacancies. And then lastly, this is the time of year we're reviewing and doing performance reviews and setting goals for 2023. Our division is really excited about the strategic plan. We like all that's come out of it and the detail and the tactics that we'll be able to really implement. And we intend to set goals that are in line with the strategic plan. Thank you for your time this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Rita. Planning and Community Development.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Planning and Community Development have been really busy. Staff have been really busy in the last 3 months working on several grant applications. Last month in September, we applied for SS4A grant, that's Safe Street for All grant for Champaign County. The grant itself includes several agencies, the City of Champaign, the City of Urbana, Champaign County, and MTD. All these agencies will be providing the local match for the grant, and it's basically a safety grant to do some infrastructure projects and also a wide community education and encouragement campaign. It's 25 million, the local match was 5 million, and we are waiting to see what happened with that grant. Hopefully we'll get it. Aside from that, staff also prepared and submitted 2 ITEP grant applications. Both of them were for the City of Urbana. One was to do the Florida Avenue shared use path between Rice Street and Lincoln Avenue, and the other one for the Bakers Lane shared use path between Main Street and also along Washington Street, connecting to the new Urbana Park District Wellness Facility. Staff also have been working in the last year, I would say, with the village of Rantoul on implementing a CARES grant to be able to build 10 bus shelters in Rantoul for the C-card services that are provided there for public transportation. The last item that I would like to mention is that, as Becky and Lisa already mentioned it, we have had staff problems instead of losing staff. And at this time, even though we are kind of fully staffed, only another staff member and myself have been working in RPC for more than 3 years. Then basically the whole staff of PCD is new, less than 2 years working at RPC. And in January, we'll be engaging on starting the development of the long-range transportation plan, which is a huge task. Then I would like to ask to be patient with us as we continue to do more with less and trying to be back to the level that we were before. Thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank Rita and her team for the tremendous amount of work that's gone into the current ITEP grant applications. We didn't get the big federal grant for Florida Avenue, but we're, working on pieces of that project, and the side path on Florida Avenue, as well as the Baker Lane connection, is just critically important. And I certainly relate to your challenges with short staffing. We're facing the same thing here in the city, and I know how hard everybody is working. So thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Workforce Development Director, Justin Arnold.
Good morning, everybody. Starting with workforce development's confusion. Like most people that work in this space, it's hard to understand WIOA policy and one-stops and the partners and the different requirements and how the system works. But someone who really understood it was Ms. Kleppel. And she's been our chair for the past 2.5 years since I've been here. And she's really been a great resource to me as I got onboarded, got my feet wet, began to work in the one step and negotiate with partners and try and lead the system for RPC. And I think next month is our last meeting with our chief elected officials board. So Ms. Kleppel, I just want to say thank you for what you've done for me over the past 2.5 years, and the knowledge that you have and insight that you have to our workforce system. Really valuable, and you've been a great chair for our group. So I appreciate what you've done for us and for our workforce area. Let's see, right now we have an application window, and we do that in preparation for each semester. So we enroll adults into vocational education programs. And if a semester starts in January, we have an app window to try and get through the process of application so we can get participants signed up and ready for that semester. Usually we have an application window open for about 2 or 3 months. We've had such a great response that we're closing after a month. So that's good for us. It's a good problem to have, that we have a lot of participants that want to go into a vocational ed program. And so we are pretty happy about that. We have been doing an orientation with the Department of Corrections. There's 5 institutions around us. And I go on once a month to a Zoom and talk to everyone about the One Stop Center and about what to do when they come home to make sure they come by and stop and see us so we can help them. And we started that this past year during a Second Chance Month, and we targeted people who had 6 months left on their stay. Well, this past week, we had our first gentleman come in from those orientations and ask for help. He'd been inside for 13 years. And he got home, and the first place he came was here to say, help me get a job, help me with my resume. And it was really moving to me and I think to all of our staff to be able to help somebody like that. So it's really great to see those orientations pay dividends, and we're looking forward to serving more of the reentry population. We're wrapping up our Afghan refugee project. We had an on-the-job training with Flexingate. That was really spearheaded by Flexingate. They are really open to diversity, equity, inclusion, and they looked for an opportunity in the workforce system to find support for these folks. And they're on our workforce development board anyway, so they helped coordinate the refugee center and RPC to support these refugees with getting onboarded, keeping a job, and finding some support services. And then what we did is we brought in a Parkland adult ed who has English as second language classes. So really solid project. I think we started with about 11 folks. We had 8 people complete. And so we consider that a success as far as workforce development goes. Lastly, we are working on apprenticeships in our area. There's been a lot of kind of groundwork laid and research done, and we're now in a position where the 2 local workforce areas, Vermilion County and RPC's workforce area, and then the 3 community colleges, Kankakee, Parkland, and Danville, are getting together for a coalition to discuss apprenticeships and how to expand apprenticeships. And then RPC is going to be is working to provide an apprenticeship specialist who will be housed at Parkland. So we'll be working in collaboration with Parkland to expand apprenticeships in our area, and we're looking forward to that relationship. That's it. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, I think last on the reports is Tyler in Data and Technology Director.
He is not here today, so there will be no report.
Okay. CEO Management Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. I just returned late last night from Pittsburgh, and I was attending a community leadership meeting that was hosted by PNC Bank. I was one of the community leaders from across the country that was invited to work with the PNC leadership team. They have committed $88 billion to do, they're calling it a community benefits plan over the next 4 years. A lot of these resources will be targeted towards low to moderate income areas, as well as communities of color, to address several things. So out of the $88 billion, $47 billion will be devoted to mortgages, particularly targeting those areas. $26.5 billion will be targeted towards small business lending. And then about $14.5 billion will be targeted towards community development financing. And so this is a tremendous opportunity for a lot of communities. And we will certainly be working with others in our community to see if we can access some of these resources to do some of the work that we do primarily through our Planning and Community Development Division. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Anyone have any old business? I guess new business, we have a closed session, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And that would mean that anyone that is not an RPC commissioner would leave the meeting at this time.